Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, and today we have a little bit of a theory, or maybe a pitch. Mr. Kevin Feige, I know you've subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel. I've seen it. I've seen your subscription notification in my emails. Thank you so much. I know you listen to the videos. I know you watch all of my reviews for feedback on the MCU. So, today, I'm basically going to be making a pitch to you. Now, I'm going to assume that you haven't already picked the director for Avengers 6 Secret Wars. Because obviously when Deadline or The Hollywood Reporter or Variety report that the director has been picked for Avengers 5 or Avengers 6, it means that they were picked that exact day, because everything moves in real time. So obviously Destin Daniel Cretton didn't know he was going to direct Kang Dynasty until literally 5 minutes before the article posted that he would. Obviously. So because there has been no announcement for the director of Secret Wars, Access Blockbusters, am going to pitch to you Kevin Feige, who I think is the obvious choice. And now, because I think it's the obvious choice, I think you know who it is already, and I'm pretty sure that you have this person lined up to direct as it stands, but this is just me as an outside viewer giving my final pitch to you, Kevin Feige, and giving you the confirmation to go ahead and get this director to helm Secret Wars. So if you haven't subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, make sure to do so if you enjoy these theory videos. Thank you guys so much on the support for the last theory video that I did on the Mutant Saga. It got so much support, and I'm really thankful for that. I really enjoy doing these theory videos if I can, and this one I feel pretty good about. I do feel really good about this. And again, there is no Access Blockbusters pod this week. It's just been a little bit of a slow week for news. There's not much to talk about. We're kind of just waiting for She-Hulk, kind of waiting for Andor to come around. So I'm doing this theory video instead because I thought it'd be fun, and I think that you guys will enjoy it as well. Alright, subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment down below. Let's get into the theory. And before we do that, let's give some context for those who don't know. So, Avengers 5 and Avengers 6 were recently announced at San Diego Comic-Con 2022. It was a massive thing. Kevin Feige got on stage and announced all of Phase 5 and then began to announce Phase 6, wrapping up the multiverse saga, which spans from Phase 4 to Phase 6. And that's crazy. Because, I don't know, back in 2014 when they announced Phase 4 in the Infinity Saga, I was thinking, man, Avengers Infinity War Part 2, that's so far away. Lo and behold, here we are, 3 years removed from Infinity War Part 2, which is now Avengers Endgame, and we're looking ahead to Phase 6. And before we know it, it'll all be there. And we'll all have seen the film, Secret Wars. It'll come out. It's going to be crazy. But the question has really become, well, who's going to be behind this project? Because I think it's fair to say that the directors, especially of these massive Avengers films, are really some of the most important people who have to make all the important decisions, or at least most of them, and really are the ones driving the film. So it's very important to get people who are qualified and who can do a good job to do these Avengers films, especially the Avengers films. Sure, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is very important. Obviously, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania introducing Kang the Conqueror for the first time, aside from He Who Remains and Loki, very important, obviously. Fantastic Four, I'm sure, will have a great director behind it as well. But again, these are the Avengers films, right? They're very, very important. So Joss Whedon directed the first Avengers film. He also directed Age of Ultron, did very well for both. At least commercially. Critically, you can argue about Age of Ultron, but I think Age of Ultron is a fun film, and obviously the Avengers kicked off the MCU as we know it, so there's that. And then Joe and Anthony Russo did Winter Soldier, did Civil War, and Kevin Feige looked at them and said, I think you can be trusted with a little bit more, and they did Infinity War and Endgame, and look how that turned out brilliantly. So as we look ahead to Phase 6, and then we look ahead to the Avengers Kang Dynasty, and we look ahead to Avengers Secret War, which are coming out in May of 2025 and November of 2025, so literally about 6 months apart, we have to ask ourselves who's going to be behind these two films. Well, we already have the answer for one of them. It was just recently reported that Destin Daniel Cretton, who directed Just Mercy, and obviously more pertinent to this video, he directed Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which is one of my favorite MCU films of all time. I really love that film. Will be directing Avengers 5 Kang Dynasty. And that's great news because I think that for everything that people have said about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, A, it did pretty well, box office wise. As well as it could have probably during the pandemic. And also B, it did well with critics and people said it was a very fresh take on the superhero genre in a new setting, in a new cultural setting, obviously set mostly in China with an Asian cast. And I just think that Destin Daniel Cretton fits very well into the MCU. So I'm really glad that they picked him to direct Avengers The Kang Dynasty. But what was really interesting in that report was that there was no director confirmed for Avengers Secret Wars, the sixth Avengers film, which will be releasing that very same year. Now, Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame were released a year apart, but even still, that's a massive undertaking to release those two giant films basically a year apart, and because of that, they had to create those films and film them back to back. They shot Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame basically back to back. And I'm going to assume that with an even tighter window, just about 6 months in between the Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, that they're going to have to do the same. But it's interesting, again, because they've only named one director for Avengers, the Kang Dynasty, and not for Secret Wars. Now, what I'm going to assume is that Destin Daniel Cretton will not be doing Secret Wars as well. I have a couple reasons for thinking this. One is that I think we would have announced that by now, along with the Kang Dynasty stuff, so I just don't think that because they haven't announced that he's going to be a part of Secret Wars, at least in the directorial capacity. We'll get to what roles he could play in Secret Wars later. But I also think that it's just too much to ask one human being to do both of those films. I mean, these two films are going to be arguably bigger than Infinity War and Endgame. And the Russo Brothers have recently spoken about how exhausted they were after doing those two films. And these are two guys. So it's not just one person, it's two of them. And again, they said they were exhausted. So I just don't think that Destin Daniel Cretton will do both of these films by himself. So again, reiterate the context here. We're looking for another director for Secret Wars because I just don't think that Destin Daniel Cretton will be doing Secret Wars. And I think it's time we look to see who's going to be directing Avengers Secret Wars. Now, I've given it away in the title of this video, so I'm not going to bury the lead here. I think that Jon Watts is going to be the one to direct Avengers Secret Wars. I think that this is a perfect choice at Kevin Feige if you're listening to this video, and I know you are. And I'm sure you've considered everything that I'm about to say here. This is, again, just me confirming to you that from an outsider's perspective, from a Marvel fan's perspective, and not someone working inside Marvel, I believe that Jon Watts is the right choice, and you should go ahead and announce that as soon as you want to. Probably at D23, maybe. So the rest of this video, I'm going to talk about why I believe Jon Watts is the perfect choice to direct Avengers Secret Wars. And there are many. There are many. So let's go through my thought process and talk about why Jon Watts is perfect for this role. First of all, we kind of have to narrow the playing field because, look, there are a lot of directors out there who would be chomping at the bit to direct an Avengers film. So we have to narrow down the field significantly. And luckily, we can do that because I think that Kevin Feige, obviously, is a very smart man. And I do not think Kevin Feige will be hiring somebody who has not directed a Marvel Studios film before to direct an Avengers film. I just don't think that he has the faith to place such a big film that could be qualified as a risk even in the hands of an outsider. I think that the person who is directing Avengers Secret Wars is going to be someone who has established themselves within the MCU with some success. And that's why you see Destin Daniel Cretton directing the Kang Dynasty. That's why you see the Russo Brothers directing Infinity War and Endgame. It's because Kevin Feige has seen their track records within the MCU and knows that they can play ball. So, we are looking for past MCU directors. Now, just going through the list very quickly, I think it's pretty clear that we're not going to get any television directors. I could be wrong about that, but I think it's one thing to direct a season of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, for example. Just for an example, I don't even know who directed that series, by the way. I totally forgot, so this is not meant to be an insult towards them at all. I'm just giving a TV show as an example. I don't think that the people who are directing The Falcon and Winter Soldier are going to be the ones to direct an Avengers film, right? I think that you need to have the experience and the expertise of directing a film to the scale of the MCU, like Shang-Chi was and like Kang Dynasty will be. Okay, so then we look at the 30-some MCU films that have come before. Now, going through the list, I'm going to list off, basically going in chronological order, some of the candidates that I think, other than Jon Watts, might be there, might have the qualifications and the want and desire to direct Avengers Secret Wars. Let's start at the beginning. I think, actually, funnily enough, Jon Favreau, the director of Iron Man and Iron Man 2, is a good candidate to direct Secret Wars. And honestly, he might be my number 2 candidate if they don't go with Jon Watts, because he has proven himself as an excellent director. He directed, obviously, films like Elf and films like Chef, but also Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2. He's a great actor. He's a great actor's director. Obviously, he played Happy Hogan all the way as recently as Spider-Man No Way Home. So he is still very much a part of the MCU. He's a geek. He loves nerddom. He was a part of Star Wars, obviously, with Dave Filoni. He's doing a bunch of great stuff over there. So I can't see why a project like Avengers Secret Wars wouldn't entice Jon Favreau. And I think he'd do a great job with it, for sure. So we can put Jon Favreau on the short list for sure. For obvious reasons, I don't think the director of The Incredible Hulk, who's doing Fast 10 right now, by the way, I don't think he's a fit. I don't think Branagh's a fit. I don't think that Joe Johnston is going to be doing it either. I don't think that Joss Whedon's going to be doing it after all the stuff that happened with the Snyder Cut. So that's phase 1 out of the way. I don't think Shane Black's coming back. I don't think Alan Taylor's coming back. I just don't think they fit the MCU very well as it stands right now. Joe and Anthony Russo is interesting. They're interesting because I think they're a possibility if for the fact that Kevin Feige said, well, they're not doing Secret Wars. They obviously could be. This could be a fake out. So they will go on the shortlist for now to direct Secret Wars. I think it's possible. It would have been even more possible had Kevin Feige straight up said they're not doing Secret Wars. And he might be lying for all we know. But I mean, I'll put them on the short list, but kind of on the bubble. So they're going to be there. James Gunn is a name that's interesting to me because I think that James Gunn is also going on the bubble for a couple reasons, because I think that A, he has proven himself in the MCU. I think he knows what he's doing, but also B, and we'll get into this criteria just a little bit later, I think he has too strong of a style. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, and again, this is not an insult to the Russo brothers. I think this is actually a compliment in the way that they handled Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. The Russo brothers are very competent artists and very competent directors. They do a great job with the action sequences. They do a great job with the ensemble casts. But they don't quite have that same flair as some of the other directors in the MCU. They don't have that unique director style that makes them immediately noticeable as the directors. Like, oh yeah, it's a blank person's film. We know that from the trailer alone. And I think that that's what makes those two Avengers films really work, because those are ensemble films. Those films are MCU films. And that is the one time where you want the film to really stand out as an MCU film and not really just be X person's film, if that makes sense. So I think that James Gunn's style would overpower any sense of continuity and togetherness with the ensemble of an Avengers film. So I think for that reason, James Gunn is not going to be high on the shortlist, although I will put him on the shortlist. I also think that he'll be done with Marvel. I think he's given us 3 amazing films, and so I think that, yeah, I don't think he'll be coming back for Avengers Secret War. So he's on the shortlist-ish, kind of in the same bubble as the Russo brothers, but not really very likely at all. Now, Peyton Reed is another name that's really interesting to me, because I think Peyton Reed has developed himself as one of the people within the MCU who works really well. He seems to work really well with Kevin Feige. He's made 3 Ant-Man films. He's even directed the season finale of Mandalorian Season 2, which was awesome. I loved it. And I think he's proven that he can play in this world. So actually, I'll put Peyton Reed on the shortlist as well next to Jon Favreau. I think Jon Favreau is a little bit more likely because Favreau has proven himself to be able to handle these bigger films. I think Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania will be an even bigger film than before. So maybe if Quantumania succeeds, Peyton Reed will be even higher on this list. But I'll kind of put him right under Jon Favreau as well. But he's a name to look out for as well. I don't think Scott Derrickson's coming back to the MCU, unfortunately, or maybe he will in Doctor Strange 3, but not for a little bit, so he'll be off the list. Again, we'll talk about Jon Watts in a little bit, obviously. Taika Waititi, I think, has proven that his style overpowers a little bit of the substance with Thor Love and Thunder. I think that his style would be too overpowering for an Avengers film, to be quite honest with you, so I think he's going to be off the list. Ryan Coogler, though, is another name that I would put on this list. I think Ryan Coogler has proven, obviously, with Black Panther 1, and now with the trailer for Wakanda Forever, which looks like just an amazing film, that he is willing to play ball with Marvel, but he is also a true artist. And the only reason I don't think he'd be higher on this list is because I just don't think he'd be up for this huge, big budget action film that doesn't have those deeper layers. I mean, Avengers Endgame is a really, really well-made film, and it does have the emotion and the heart that a lot of blockbusters don't, but it doesn't have that same deepness or richness that I think Wakanda Forever and Black Panther 1 will have. So I just don't think that he'd want to tackle a project like this that's so huge that won't allow him to express his artistic creativity as much, but we'll see. I'll put him also on the short list as well. Bowden and Fleck, who directed Captain Marvel, I don't think so. Black Widow director Kate Shortland, I don't think so. Obviously, we talked about Destin Daniel Cretton. I don't think Chloe Zhao would be there. I mean, maybe she's on the bubble, but again, just with the way the Eternals turned out, I'm not sure. And then we have Sam Raimi rounding it out. And again, I think that Sam Raimi is a good director, but I just think his style kind of overpowers the Avengers tone that they're going for. So we're left with Jon Watts, who I haven't talked about, Jon Favreau, Peyton Reed, and Ryan Coogler, really, as the shortlist directors for Avengers Secret Wars. And if you look at those directors, I think there's one that stands out above the rest. Jon Watts. Now here's why. First of all, like I talked about with the Russo brothers, you want a director for Avengers that doesn't have that overpowering style as a director. That's why I think James Gunn is kind of off the list. That's why I kind of think that Ryan Coogler, who doesn't have an overpowering style but does have a distinctiveness to his films, is kind of off the list. Obviously, Taika Waititi and Sam Raimi as well. I think that Jon Watts' films, his Spider-Man films, his Spider-Man trilogy, while incredibly solid and incredibly well directed, don't have that thing that make you go, oh, this is a Jon Watts film for sure. I think that everything that he does is very quietly competent, and not just competent, but excellently done. And I think that that's a really big key for these Avengers films. It really reminds me of the Russo brothers. So there's one. Number 2, he is proven to be able to handle the biggest, and this is not an exaggeration, the biggest Marvel character in its history, Spider-Man. It is not an exaggeration that Spider-Man is the biggest Marvel character, I think, in all of its comic history, and I would argue in all of its film history, ahead of characters like Wolverine, Iron Man, Captain America, and the Hulk. I really do think so. And he has proven that taking Tom Holland and bringing him into the MCU right after he was introduced in Civil War, and right after Andrew Garfield had just played the character and Tobey Maguire before him in very successful films, obviously before the third Spider-Man and the second Amazing Spider-Man, but still he proved that he was able to handle that pressure and bring Tom Holland into the MCU. And that is huge. He is able to handle pressure. That's big. Number 3 is that he's able to handle an ensemble cast. We saw that with Spider-Man No Way Home. There are a ton of brilliant actors in that film. You have Tom Holland, you have Zendaya, you have Jon Favreau, Charlie Cox, Marissa Tomei, and then all the villains, right? You have Alfred Molina, Willem Dafoe, Jamie Foxx, you have Thomas Hayden Church-ish, kind of. You have Rhys Ifans-ish, kind of. And obviously, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. This is a massive cast, and with Secret Wars, it's going to be even bigger. But I think that Jon Watts has proven that he can handle that sort of thing. And obviously, this kind of leads into my fourth point, is that he can handle fan service. That's what you really want, right? The Russo Brothers proved that with Civil War. They can handle fan service in a way that's not pandering and in a way that's pleasing to the audience, with the way that they introduced Spider-Man and obviously the conclusion to Civil War and also the airport battle. Jon Watts was able to bring in Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in a way that felt organic to the story and didn't feel like it was pandering to the audience. And finally, the last point that I want to make is that he can deal with the multiverse. Spider-Man No Way Home is a multiverse film. Avengers Secret Wars will presumably be a multiverse film. I think that if you look at everything that I've just talked about, it is really and exceedingly obvious that Jon Watts is the clear candidate to direct Avengers Secret Wars. How is that going to work with Destin Daniel Cretton doing Avengers Kang Dynasty? Well, I happen to think that the two films will be shot back to back, but will be very different from each other. And I think that what's going to end up happening is there's going to be kind of a sharing arrangement. I think that Jon Watts will be on set pretty much every single day. He'll be sort of behind the director's chair while Destin Daniel Cretton is doing the actual directing. They'll be consulting with one another. I think that it'll be vice versa for Destin Daniel Cretton on Jon Watts' Secret Wars. And I think that it'll be a very collaborative process, but it will allow each of the directors to execute their own vision for the films. I think that, again, it's just too much for one person to handle. And here's another thing as well, and I'll leave you guys with this before I end the video. I think there's a good reason that Jon Watts dropped out of the Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four is coming out November 2024. Obviously, we now know that Jon Watts is doing a TV show for Disney Plus for Star Wars called Skeleton Crew, and that's going to be 2023-2024. But if he were going to be doing the Fantastic Four, he would have been busy all the way up to the end of 2024, right? And that's right about the time that Kang Dynasty's marketing campaign is going to start. That's too close of a window. Now with the entirety of Fantastic Four out of the way, I have a feeling that Kevin Feige dangled this in front of him and said, hey, Jon, look, we'd love for you to do Fantastic Four, but we have some bigger things in mind for you. How about we give you Avengers Secret Wars instead? I would almost be willing to put money on the fact that that's exactly what happened. That Avengers Secret Wars didn't have a director, and Kevin Feige looked and said, oh, well, we have the perfect candidate, and it's Jon Watts. So, Mr. Kevin Feige, if you're listening to this and you've already lined up the call with Jon Watts, you've already called him to your office and he's waiting in the lobby and you're just about to call him in and tell him he's directing Secret Wars, this is my confirmation to you. Go ahead and do it. I think he'd be great. What do you guys think of this theory? Do you think that Jon Watts is a good fit for Avengers Secret Wars? Let me know in the comments down below. Do you think that Destin Daniel Cretton will do both instead? Or do you think that another director will be directing Secret Wars? Let me know in the comments. Give this video a like, subscribe to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel if you enjoy these theories, and I will see you guys in the next one.